Hi-oh, because I am bang on the dot. I am on time. Is that a sign? Is that a sign of something? Anyway, first, what do we do with the O? O is breathing. Breathing and crushing and sniffing. So, because why? Because these herbs that are in Shakespeare are good for the brain, are good for the body. They help connect the vagus nerve, the heart, and the head, which I believe is also what Shakespeare does. Acting, theater, all of that kind of stuff does that because it involves the whole self. And we had the line of the week months ago. It's all one. And what do I have today? Can you see that? It's time. The smell of time. I swear I'm going to write something with that as a title. It's a very pungent smell, not like rosemary. I also have rosemary. Fresh rosemary as opposed to my dried rosemary, which is here. So here's the difference. This is very green, and you have to squish it. And this crumbles, of course, and gets all over the carpeting after you've vacuumed it. It's not quite as strong today, but what you can do is crush all that up and put it in a bowl and keep it for your cooking. Soups and all of that stuff. Rosemary tea, actually. Rosemary water is very good for a memory tea, clearing the clouds and the brain fog. And everybody's talking about brain fog and recommending all these capsules and all of this kind of stuff on Instagram, I notice. Anyway, so we said last week, the line of the week, and I know it's backwards, one touch of nature makes the whole world kin. And that's from Troilus and Cressida. But the other one, there's another one that I love so much, but I'm saving it for next month for the Urban Tree Festival. So we're going to go back to a little bit of what we talked about last week and why we do the brain body boost, the Shakespeare therapy, herbal healing. That's for Hannah. It's because because you need the whole organism. And we have gotten into a world of specialists, and this person only knows this, and this person only does that, especially with doctors. I'm not even going to get into that whole thing, but someday I will. And we need to look at the whole of everything. And I was thinking about individuation and how the single-pointed achievement supposedly came in with the 19th century and, Thomas Edison inventing the light bulb and Alexander Graham Bell inventing the telephone. But we know that other people had hands in that and people in other countries were working on the same thing. And it's not just one person who came up with one thing. And, the whole DNA helix with Watson and Crick, Rosalind Franklin had a huge part to play in that discovery. And prior to, I say that individuation, that whole thing came in the 16th century. The seeds of it, yes, I'm going to use a plant metaphor. The seeds of it started then. And I'm working on a paper about that situation, so I'm not going to go too deeply into it now. I'm sure everybody's like, phew. But anyway, the line of the week is what I talked about last week, a rose by any other. What is it? Everybody's going to say name. A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. But I pulled out my trusty, dusty Norton First Folio facsimile. And actually, in the First Folio, I'm going to show you this, but you're not going to be able to see it, see that? I'm kidding. But it says, a rose by any other word would smell as sweet. Word. Now, nobody says that. Is name, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. A rose by any other word would smell as sweet. So we did use that in the book. We used word because of the First Folio. And I explain it a little bit in what we call the Boschek's Buddy, the companion, which we have limited edition of, and it's basically all these things that were taken out of the book. Every plant by character, by play, by genus and species, stuff like that. A TOC. We didn't have room for that. Anyway, word or name your choice, would smell as sweet. And aside from being a beautiful metaphor, it's also a line of logic. It's a line of logic. And how are we going to figure out all the things that we need to gain wisdom? It's not just the heart. You need the brain also. It's not just the brain. You need the heart also. So that's a beautiful line to remember, because it connects the emotion with logic. It's, beautiful and pretty good. That Shakespeare guy. Wow. Anyway, so what's in a name? A rose by any other word would smell as sweet. But you can say name if you want to. Anyway, so that's our line of the week. And this week we're going to be, Hannah and I were discussing it because there was St. George's Day on Friday, the traditional birthday celebration. We actually have the baptismal record for Shakespeare, which is tomorrow the 26th. And Samuel Schoenbaum, who wrote Shakespeare's Lives and does a lot of documentary evidence, he goes through this long disquisition about why he thinks the birthday is the 24th. But it's easy to put it on the National Day of England, the 23rd, so that's what they do. Same with the Death Day. Anyway, So we were talking about, should we talk about baptism? Are there plants used for baptism or fertility? Now, fertility is tricky area. And I will do a talk about this, but I think it needs to be to a select audience. But one of the things I found in putting the book together and writing the book and editing all the material was that so many of the plants, I would say 85% of the over 170 plants were used as an abortifacient. And I realized, as this came up over and over and over again, that they just would try anything. They would try anything. It didn't mean that it was effective. It just belies a desperation. And I found that just, incredibly sad. Anyway, but also fascinating. So, because of St. George's Day and the flag in the 16th century, before James comes to the throne in March of 1603, was the Red Cross. So we were talking about the Red Cross Knight from Edmund Spenser's The Fairy Queen, because he's representing England. That character is representing England. And so James, when he comes in, he joins it with Scotland, and it becomes the Union Jack, basically the Union Jack that we know today. But prior to that, it was just a Red Cross. And what is the Red Cross? Now it is a health organization. So we decided to do herbs. She suggested this, actually. It's brilliant. What would be in your Herbal First Aid Kit? So let's bring her on now that I have. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So I gave a little preamble to why we decided on the Red Cross and the first aid kit. But so we're talking about an herbal first aid kit, correct?
Yep, Herbal First Aid Kit. So I started writing lists and then I got a bit carried away. So I decided to stop writing a list. Because there's so many things that you can do. But I ended up with a list of 12 different things that you kind of hopefully wouldn't regularly encounter, but could encounter in the home. That you could do something with Shakespeare herbs, basically.
Yes, good.
So I'll start with, I think we've spoken about this before, bee stings. So obviously if you get a bee sting, ouch, make sure you take the bee sting out, and obviously if you have anaphylaxis, get your EpiPen. But if you're not allergic to bee stings, to take down the swelling really, really quickly, slice of fresh onion and rub it on. Simple.
Wow. Okay. I've never gotten a bee sting, so there's actually a little stinger that they stick in your skin. Ow, like a splinter. Okay. Well, who doesn't really have an onion around the house usually, because they keep forever. So that's a great first aid kit tip. Okay.
So linking on with that, if this one, we've spoken about vinegar so much in the last year. I thought, well, I'll squeeze a vinegar one in as well, because we can obviously use vinegar to extract herbs with. So, hey, if you're going to be interested in herbs, you've got to have some vinegar in the house.
Okay.
So for wasp stings, vinegar in a poultice. So, soak some cotton wool in vinegar, pop that on, and that takes down the swelling and the inflammation as well.
Okay. What's the difference between a bee sting and a wasp sting? The wasps don't leave a little stinger in there, right? No. Yeah.
No, wasps just sting you and then fly on and sting someone else.
Nice. Like narcissists. Wasps are like narcissists. Okay.
And then for more kind of general sort of insect bites and things like that, you'd be looking at ribwort plantain.
Yes, we love plantain.
And just pick a leaf. So if you just have some growing in your garden or in a pot, or know where there is some local to you that's fairly decent, and just pick a leaf and scrunch it up a bit in your fingers and just rub it straight on and just get all that lovely green juice on the bite, and it will help stop the itching, and it will help to take down the inflammation from that bite.
Yeah, when I fell so many times and had so many issues with my knees and various other things this last summer, and fortunately plantain, not a banana, there it is right there, was growing everywhere. So I was constantly pilfering everybody's plantain and plastering it on my knees.
It's so good.
Yeah, all around. And Shakespeare talks about it as that. He knows his healing herbs, whatever. Go ahead.
So then the other thing that might happen when you're in the home is you might accidentally burn yourself on the oven, for example. So for a really, really simple burn, for not a big burn, it would be really good to have an aloe vera plant in your kitchen, and then you just slice off one of the outer leaves and just open it up, or you can just squeeze out the lovely aloe vera gel straight onto your burn. Or for something a bit less sticky and a bit more readily available, lavender essential oil, just dropped straight onto it, because it's one of the few essential oils you can put directly on the skin, and that takes the heat right out of it, and also stops it from scarring as much as well.
Oh, there's so many times I wish I had that. Okay, so, and I got a little cut when I was chopping up vegetables on my finger. Is that plantain too? That would be plantain rather than...
Could be, but what you could do is on that, for any cut, as long as it's a clean cut and it's not dirty, it's not got anything inside it, you could put some marigold cream on it. Ooh. So some calendula cream, because that's a vulnerary herb. It's a wound healing herb, and it really helps to take the inflammation down, but also speed up that skin healing as well, which is really nice.
Oh, that's fantastic. So look at all these things that you can instantly feel better. One of the reasons that people sort of abandon nature's pharmacy, and I won't get into the politics of, witches and herbal women and versus the doctor thing that grew up around the 17th century, particularly. But that pills and medical stuff is faster. But Hannah's telling us here how quickly these herbal remedies work on everyday slings and arrows that you might, everyday slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. Anyway, whips and scorns. These are more whips and scorns, maybe. Anyway, so thank you so much. I think we will revisit this Red Cross first aid kit idea with more on your very long list. But it's so much fun. So I think you already know this line, but for the line of the week, what's in a name? A rose by any other
word
would smell sweet. Word. Oh, I love it. And parting is such sweet sorrow that I should say goodbye. You should say goodbye till we see you next week. Have a great week.
You too. Bye.
Bye.